The champagne tower glittered under crystal chandeliers like a monument to wealth I'd never touch. I stood in my ill-fitting black uniform behind the coat check counter, watching women drip in diamonds hand their fares to my coworker while I processed claim tickets with numb fingers. The Grandview Hotel's annual charity Gala, the city's elite donated thousands. To feel virtuous while I earned $200 I desperately needed for rent. "Excuse me," a woman's voice, sharp with entitlement. "You there?" "Coat check girl." I turned to find her. 50s, plastic surgery, smooth. Dripping in emeralds that probably cost more than my entire life. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" "My bracelet." She thrust her wrist at me, bare except for a tan line. "It was on when I checked my coat. Now it's gone. You people need to be more careful with." "I'm sorry, but I haven't handled any coats tonight," I said carefully, keeping my voice even. "I've only been processing tickets." Perhaps it fell off in the ballroom. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you calling me a liar?" "No, ma'am, security." Her voice cut through the elegant murmur of conversation like a knife. "This girl stole my bracelet." My stomach dropped. Around us, heads turned. Conversations died. The security guard approached, his expression already condemning me before I could speak. "Ma'am, I didn't touch." "Check her pockets," the woman demanded. "These people always think they can." "Found it," another woman's voice called from near the elevators. "Darla, your bracelet fell behind the credenza?" The emerald-draped woman snatched her recovered jewelry without apology, without acknowledgement, and swept away as if I'd simply ceased to exist. The damage was done. Every eye in that marble-floored lobby had seen me accused, had assumed my guilt, had reminded me exactly what I was to people like them. Nothing. I made it to the service hallway before the first sob escaped. Then I was running, bursting through a side door into the hotel's garden, gasping for air that didn't smell like expensive perfume and casual cruelty. The night was cold against my overheated face. I collapsed onto a stone bench behind a wall of perfectly manicured hedges, finally letting the tears come, not just for tonight's humiliation, but for everything my mother's medical bills that had swallowed my college fund. The eviction notice taped to my door this morning, the bone-deep exhaustion of working 3 jobs and still drowning. I was so tired of being invisible, until someone needed a villain. "Are you all right?" I jerked upright, swiping frantically at my tears. A man stood at the garden entrance stall, broad-shouldered, in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But it was his face that froze me, all sharp angles and cold beauty, with eyes so dark they looked black in the garden's dim lighting. He should have terrified me. Everything about him radiated danger, from his precise posture to the way he assessed me with predatory focus. Instead, his expression softened with something I couldn't name. "I'm fine," I managed, voice wrecked from crying. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be out here." "I'll go back inside." "Don't." He moved closer, and I saw 2 men in similar suits materialize from the shadows behind him, bodyguards. I realized with a jolt that woman was cruel. You handled it with more grace than she deserved. He'd witnessed my humiliation. Heat flooded my face. "Here." He produced a pocket square from his jacket's silk, monogrammed with initials I couldn't make out in the darkness. "Keep it." I took it with trembling fingers, our hands brushing briefly. His skin was warm, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone who radiated such controlled violence. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't even know you're—" "There you are." My supervisor's voice shattered the moment. She grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "You abandoned your post." "That's a dock in pay, maybe your whole shift if Mr. Patterson finds out." "Wait." I tried to turn back to the stranger, to return his pocket square, to at least learn his name, but my supervisor was already dragging me toward the service entrance, and he'd melted back into the shadows with his guards, like he'd never existed at all. Hours later, after my shift ended and I'd collected my reduced paycheck, I left through the staff exit. The alley was dark, empty. But I felt it, the weight of eyes tracking my every step. I looked back once, catching a glimpse of a black SUV idling at the alley's mouth, watching, waiting. Then I turned the corner, and it was gone. The pounding on my apartment door started at 7 a.m., jolting me from restless sleep still cluttered with dreams of dark eyes and dangerous strangers. "Miss Parker! I know you're in there!" My landlord. I pulled the thin blanket over my head as if that would make him disappear along with the eviction notice, and the reality of my bank account showing $37. "You're 2 weeks overdue, Miss Parker. I've got 3 people waiting for this unit." I dragged myself to the door, opening it just wide enough to see Mr. Kozak's red face and cheap cologne. "I get paid Friday," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. My reduced paycheck from last night wouldn't even cover half of what I owed. "I'll have it then. You said that last week." His eyes narrowed. "Friday, or I'm changing the locks. And don't think about pulling any legal aid nonsense. I've got documentation of every missed payment." He stormed off, leaving me trembling in my doorway. Through my apartment's single grimy window, morning light revealed exactly how far I'd fallen, the water-stained ceiling, the space heater I couldn't afford to run, the empty refrigerator humming in the corner. I was making coffee with my last filter when I noticed it. A black SUV parked directly across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. 2 silhouettes visible in the front seats. Probably nothing. This neighborhood saw its share of suspicious vehicles. But when I left for my breakfast shift at Rosa's Diner 2 hours later, the SUV was still there. Same position. Same silhouettes. And as I walked past, I felt their attention track me like a physical touch. The hair on my neck stood up. At the diner, I dropped 2 orders and spilled coffee on my apron, my hands refusing to steady. Rosa noticed, pulling me aside during the lunch rush. "Mia, what's wrong? You're shaking. There's a car outside my building. Men watching. They've been there all morning." Her expression shifted from concern to something darker. "What kind of car?" "Black SUV. Expensive looking." Rosa crossed herself. "Dios mio. Did you do something? Borrow money from the wrong people?" "No. I don't know what they want." But even as I said it, I thought of last night. The garden. The stranger with his silk pocket square and bodyguards who moved like shadows. When I returned home that afternoon, the SUV hadn't moved. Mrs. Chun from 3B caught me in the hallway, her elderly face creased with worry. "Lily, those men, they've been asking about you." My stomach dropped. "What men?" "The ones in the black car. They knocked on my door this morning asking questions. How long you've lived here, if you have visitors. If you're in trouble." She gripped my arm. "Professional types. Not police. Something else." I barely heard her after that, my pulse roaring in my ears. This wasn't random. This was about me specifically. By dusk, rage had burned through my fear. I couldn't live like this, watched, questioned, trapped in my own home. If someone wanted something from me, they could damn well ask to my face. I marched down the stairs and across the street, my heart hammering as I approached the SUV. The passenger window rolled down smoothly, revealing a man with pale eyes and a face like carved granite. "Can I help you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He studied me with unnerving calm. "Miss Parker, we're here to ensure your safety. I don't need Mr. Volkov's orders." The name hit me like a physical blow. I'd never heard it before, didn't recognize it, couldn't place it in any context that made sense. But the way he said it, with reverence and warning in equal measure, made my blood run cold. "Who," I managed through numb lips, "is Mr. Volkov?" The man's expression didn't change. "Your benefactor. We'll be here as long as necessary. Please don't be alarmed." He rolled up the window with mechanical finality, ending the conversation. I stumbled back to my apartment, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I collapsed against it, trying to process what was happening. A stranger's pocket square sat on my counter where I'd left it that morning, still monogrammed with initials I couldn't read. Now they felt less like a kindness and more like a claim. The breakfast rush at Rosa's Diner was my salvation. No time to think about the black SUV still parked outside my building, or the name that had kept me awake all night. Volkov. I tried Googling it on my cracked phone screen. The results were carefully sanitized: philanthropist, real estate developer, import-export businessman. Nothing that explained why he'd sent armed men to watch me. Nothing that explained the cold dread pooling in my stomach. "Order up," Rosa called, sliding plates across the kitchen window. I grabbed them, plastered on my customer service smile, and tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. The lunch crowd was thinning when she walked in. Everything about her screamed money. The tailored charcoal suit, the heels that cost more than my rent, the way she moved through the diner like she owned it. Customers instinctively made space as she approached my station. "Lily Parker?" Her voice was crisp, professional, accented with something Eastern European. "Yes?" I set down the coffee pot carefully, hyper-aware of every eye in the diner turning toward us. She produced a cream-colored envelope from her leather portfolio, extending it with manicured fingers. "For you." The paper was heavy, expensive. My name was written across the front in bold, black ink, elegant, masculine handwriting that somehow felt familiar. Inside, a single card. "We should discuss your current situation. The car will collect you at 7 p.m. Dress comfortably. You have nothing to fear." Divvy below the note, an address. Aurelio's. The restaurant where reservations booked 6 months in advance, where entrees started at $200. "Mr. Volkov looks forward to your company," the woman said, as if this were a normal business transaction. Then she turned and left, her heels clicking against the linoleum with mechanical precision. I stared at the invitation, my heart racing. "Mia," Rosa's voice, tight with fear. "Come here, now." She pulled me into the kitchen, away from curious customers. Her face had gone pale beneath her makeup. "Let me see that." I handed her the card with numb fingers. Rosa read it once, twice, then crossed herself with her free hand. "Dios mio. You're involved with Dominic Volkov. I'm not involved with anyone. I don't even know who. He's Russian mafia, Lily." Rosa's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "His family controls half this city. Shipping, construction, unions, anything that moves money, they touch it. And the other half." She made a cutting gesture across her throat. "They learnt not to compete. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too hot. There must be some mistake. I met him once for 2 minutes in a garden. He gave me his handkerchief. That's all. That's never all with men like Dominic Volkov." Rosa gripped my shoulders, her eyes fierce. "If he's sent men to watch you, if he's summoning you to Aurelio's, Lily, you already belong to him, whether you agreed to it or not." "I'm not going," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "If you don't go, he'll just send them to get you." Rosa released me, her expression a mixture of pity and resignation. "Men like Volkov don't take no for an answer. And if he's interested in you, God help you, Mia. God help you." The rest of my shift passed in a haze. I moved, mechanically refilling coffee, taking orders, smiling at customers who had no idea my entire world was tilting off its axis. At 6:45, I was in my apartment, staring at my pathetic closet. "I'm not going," I told myself. "I'll ignore the car. Pretend this isn't happening." At 6:55, I was pulling on my only decent dress, a simple navy blue sheath I'd worn to my mother's funeral. At 7 p.m. exactly, a knock sounded at my door. Through the peephole, I saw the same granite-faced man from the SUV, now standing in my hallway with the patient stillness of a predator who knows his prey has nowhere to run. I could refuse. Lock the door, call the police. But Rosa's words echoed in my mind. "You already belong to him." My hand moved to the doorknob as if controlled by someone else. The man nodded once when I emerged. "Miss Parker." "The car is waiting." I followed him down the stairs, out into the cool evening air, toward a black Mercedes idling at the curb. The rear door stood open like a mouth. This was my last chance. My last moment to choose safety over curiosity, poverty over danger. I slid into the leather interior, and the door closed behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. Aurelio's was the kind of restaurant I'd only seen in movies or dark wood paneling. Amber lighting and hushed conversations conducted over wine that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The matadi greeted me by name, as if women in 5-year-old funeral dresses wandered in every evening. Miss Parker, Mr. Volkov is expecting you. He led me through the main dining room, past tables of people who belonged here, to a private alcove at the back. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights. A single table for two, candles flickering between crystal glasses. And him. Dominic Volkov rose as I approached, and the garden stranger came into sharp focus under proper lighting. He was younger than I'd thought, mid-30s perhaps, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Roman coins. Severe, beautiful, dangerous, Miss Parker. His voice was exactly as I remembered, deep, controlled, with the ghost of an accent softening his consonants. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words escaped before I could stop them. His lips curved, not quite a smile. There's always a choice. You made yours when you got in the car. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, sit. I sat, my hands folded tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. A waiter appeared immediately, pouring wine I hadn't requested into a glass I was afraid to touch. You're nervous, Dominic observed, his dark eyes studying me with unnerving focus. Your men have been watching my apartment for 2 days. You summoned me to a restaurant I can't afford to breathe in. Forgive me if I'm not relaxed. Fair enough. He took a measured sip of his wine. Let me alleviate some of your concerns. You're not in danger from me, Lily. May I call you Lily? The casual use of my first name should have annoyed me. Instead, it felt oddly intimate. What do you want from me? Direct. I appreciate that. He set down his glass with deliberate precision. I want to help you. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Men like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return. You're right. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze pinning me in place. So let me be clear about expectations. You're drowning, Lily. 2 months behind on rent. 15,000 in student loan debt. Credit cards maxed. Working 3 jobs that still don't cover your mother's remaining medical bills. Blood drained from my face. How do you... I make it my business to know things. No apology in his tone, just cold fact. You're 1 medical emergency away from homelessness. 1 bad week from total collapse. And the people who should help you, landlords, employers. The system's designed to protect you. They're circling like sharks. My throat tightened with humiliation and rage. You had me investigated. I did. You had no right. I had every right. His voice remained level, but something flickered in his eyes. The moment I decided you were mine to protect, the possessiveness in that statement should have sent me running. Instead, it paralyzed me. I don't understand. We met once, for 2 minutes. I'm nobody, you're not nobody to me. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine where they clutched the napkin. I'm offering you a life raft, Lily. Move into my guest house. Accept a monthly allowance. Let me resolve your debts. In exchange for what? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Sex? Some kind of company? The word cut through my assumption. Dinner when I'm home, conversation, your time and presence. Nothing you don't freely choose to give. I stared at him, trying to find the trap hidden in his words. That doesn't make sense. Why would you? Because when I saw you crying in that garden, something in me recognized something in you. His thumb traced a slow circle on the back of my hand. We're both alone in ways that money can't fix. It's both drowning in different oceans. The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open inside me. What if I say no? His expression shuttered. Then my men withdraw. Your debts remain your own. You return to your apartment and your 3 jobs, and we never speak again. He paused. But you won't survive it, Lily. Not another 6 months. Not at this pace. The truth of it burned like acid. He was right. I was drowning. How much time, I asked, my voice cracking, do I have to decide? Something like relief flickered across his features. As much as you need. 3 days. 'Cause how long I lasted before calling the number on the card. Dominic had left me. The voice that answered was professional, female, the same woman from the diner. "Miss Parker, Mr. Volkov has been expecting your call." Now I stood in the guest house on his estate, surrounded by a level of luxury I'd only seen in magazines. The main room alone was larger than my entire apartment hardwood floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, furniture that looked antique and priceless. A kitchen with appliances I didn't know how to use. A bedroom with a bed so large I could get lost in it. "Your belongings have been brought from your previous residence," the housekeeper said. A kind-faced woman named Maria who moved through the space with quiet efficiency. "If you need anything at all, please use the house phone. Someone is always available." My belongings fit into 2 cardboard boxes sitting incongruously on the marble entryway. Everything I owned in the world, dwarfed by a single room of Dominic Volkov's guest house. "Mr. Volkov wishes you to feel at home here," Maria continued. "You have complete privacy. He resides in the main house." She gestured toward the sprawling mansion visible through the trees. "But he requests the pleasure of your company for dinner each evening, if you're amenable." Requests. As if I could refuse. "What time?" I asked. 7 o'clock. "We'll send someone to collect you." After she left, I explored my new gilded cage, maybe. Each room more beautiful than the last. The bathroom was all marble and gold fixtures, with a tub large enough to swim in. The closet held clothes I didn't recognize, my size, my style, but exponentially nicer than anything I'd ever owned. He'd thought of everything. The first dinner was strange. Dominic appeared exactly at 7, dressed more casually than at the restaurant, dark slacks. A crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He asked about my day, my adjustment, whether I needed anything. His attention was absolute, unnerving, like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "You're staring," I said finally, unable to bear the intensity. "I'm observing." His lips curved slightly. "You're uncomfortable. I'm confused." "This whole situation is unusual," he supplied. "I'm aware, but necessary." "For whom?" His eyes held mine across the candlelit table. "For both of us, I think." The second night I found my favorite tea in the kitchen, a specific herbal blend I hadn't mentioned to anyone. The third night, Maria served my mother's recipe for chicken soup without being asked. He was learning me, cataloguing my preferences, anticipating my needs. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in years. On the fourth night, I awoke to shouting, then gunfire. The sound cracked through the peaceful darkness like breaking glass. I bolted upright, heart hammering, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand. Through the window, I saw figures moving in the shadows, security guards running toward the main gate, weapons drawn. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone twice before managing to dial the number Dominic had programmed under emergency. He answered on the first ring. "Lily, they're shooting. I heard what's happening. Stay inside. Lock your doors. I'm coming." He was at my door within 2 minutes, appearing so quickly he must have run from the main house. He wore dark pants and nothing else, a gun held with practiced ease in his right hand. Rage and concern warred in his expression when I opened the door. "Are you hurt?" He stepped inside, his free hand reaching for my face, tilting it to examine me in the dim light. "No, I'm fine, but stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Victor." His voice carried absolute command. "Understand?" I nodded, mute with fear. The next hour crawled by. More shots, shouting in languages I didn't recognize. Then silence, somehow worse than the violence. When Dominic returned, blood spattered his bare chest. Not his, I realized with dizzy relief, but someone's. "What happened?" I whispered. "Rivals. Testing our defenses." He set the gun down carefully on my entryway table. "They won't try again." The certainty in his voice was chilling. "You're bleeding," I noticed, pointing to a cut above his eyebrow. "It's nothing." But I was already moving to the bathroom, returning with a first aid kit Maria had stocked. "Sit." He obeyed, surprisingly docile as I cleaned the wound with trembling hands. This close, I could smell gunpowder and something metallic. Could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed as if still ready for violence. "I should go," he said when I finished. "Let you rest." "No." The word escaped before I could reconsider. "Stay, just until I fall asleep." His expression softened in a way that stole my breath. "As long as you need." 2 weeks passed in a rhythm I never expected to find comfortable. Mornings reading in the garden while security guards patrolled the perimeter with quiet professionalism. Afternoons exploring the estate's library, 3 floors of books in a dozen languages. Evenings with Dominic, discussing everything from philosophy to the mundane details of our days. He was surprisingly easy to talk to once the initial wariness faded. Intelligent, well-read, with a dry humor that caught me off guard. He asked questions about my mother, my abandoned degree in literature, the poems I used to write before exhaustion consumed all my creative energy. "You should write again," he said one evening over wine. "You have the library time, no financial pressure. What's stopping you? Guilt, maybe." I traced the rim of my glass. "Feeling like I don't deserve this. You deserve far more than this." His voice carried absolute conviction. "The world taught you to accept scraps. I'm simply correcting that education." It was almost normal until the night I saw him in his study. I'd been looking for him to say goodnight. Unusual, since he typically walked me back to the guest house himself. The study door stood slightly ajar, golden light spilling into the darkened hallway. Through the gap, I saw him, standing at his desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, blood painting his knuckles in abstract patterns. His face wore that cold mask I recognized from the restaurant, the monster everyone else feared, carved in ice and fury. I must have made a sound because his head snapped toward the door, eyes finding mine through the narrow opening. "Don't ask," he said, his voice flat, empty, but I was learning to read him now, learning to see past the carefully constructed walls to the man underneath. I pushed the door open fully, stepping inside despite every instinct screaming to retreat. "Someone threatened you today. It wasn't a question." His jaw tightened. "Someone mentioned your name in a way I didn't appreciate. It won't happen again." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, heat pooled low in my stomach, dark, unsettling, undeniable. What did they say? I moved closer, drawn despite my better judgment. "Nothing you need to hear." He turned away, reaching for a bottle of vodka on the sidebar. "Go to bed, Lily. This isn't don't." I caught his wrist, stopping him. His skin was hot beneath my fingers, pulse hammering. "Don't shut me out." He looked down at my hand on his arm, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "You don't want to know this part of me. Stop deciding what I want." Boldness I didn't know I possessed surged through me. "I'm here, aren't I? In your world, under your protection. You don't get to hide the cost." For a long moment he simply stared at me. Then, slowly, deliberately, he set down the vodka. "Dmitry Kozlov." His voice was cold, precise. "He runs the East Side gambling operations. We have an arrangement. He stays in his territory. I stay in mine." Today, at a meeting, he suggested that my new ... companion might be available for entertainment at his establishments. Ice flooded my veins. He wanted to... He will never finish that thought again. Dominic's hand came up to cut my face with surprising gentleness, his bloodied knuckles careful against my skin. "No one speaks about you that way. No one thinks about you that way. Not while I'm breathing." I should have been horrified. Should have seen this for what it was. Violence. Possession. A man who would hurt others over perceived slights. Instead, I felt protected. Valued. Seen in a way that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "I can't be the reason you hurt people," I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. "You're not." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You're the reason I show restraint. If you weren't here waiting for me to come home..." Double, quotes his expression darkened. Dmitry wouldn't have walked away from that meeting. The implication hung between us, brutal, honest, undeniable. What does that make me? I asked. Your conscience. Your leash? My humanity. He said it so simply, like it was obvious. The thing that reminds me I'm more than what my father made me. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shuddering back into that cold mask. I need to handle this. Victor will walk you back. Dominic, he kissed my forehead, brief and chaste, but the contact sent electricity racing through my nerves. Sleep well, Lily. Tomorrow we'll pretend this conversation never happened. But as Victor appeared to escort me back to the guest house as I lay alone in my too large bed, I knew we'd crossed some invisible line tonight, and neither of us wanted to go back. The shouting at the estate gate started during my afternoon tea. I was in the library, curled in the window seat with a volume of Neruda, when raised voices shattered the peaceful quiet. I know she's in there, Lily. Lily Parker. My blood turned to ice. I recognized that voice, slurred with alcohol, thick with rage. Mr. Kozak, my former landlord. I moved to the window, watching as security guards blocked the ornate gates. Beyond them, Kozak gestured wildly, his face crimson with fury or drink or both. You can't hide forever, his voice carried across the manicured lawn, whoring yourself to the Russian mob. Your mother would be ashamed. The words hit like physical blows. Shame burned through me, not for my choices, but for the public spectacle. For the guards witnessing this, for the way Kozak reduced everything to something ugly and transactional. Victor appeared, his expression granite hard. Within minutes, Kozak was being escorted away firmly, but without violence. The gates closed. Silence returned. But the damage was done. I couldn't face dinner. Couldn't face Dominic's questions or the inevitable conversation about my past dragging itself into his pristine world. Instead, I retreated deeper into the library, hiding among the stacks like a child. That's where he found me an hour later. Lily. His voice came from the doorway, gentle but knowing. Maria said you refused dinner. I'm not hungry. That's not why you're hiding. I kept my eyes on the book in my lap, unseeing. I'm not hiding. You are. He moved closer, his footsteps soft on the Persian rug. And you don't need to. Kozak has been dealt with. He won't approach the estate again. Dealt with. I finally looked up, meeting his eyes. What does that mean? It means he's been encouraged to remember his place. Dominic sat across from me, elbows on his knees, expression more open than I'd ever seen it. To keep your name out of his mouth permanently. He called me a whore. The word tasted like ash. In front of your security, your staff, everyone. He's wrong, is he? Bitterness leaked into my voice. I'm living in your house, taking your money, wearing clothes you bought me. Stop. The command was soft but absolute. He's a bitter man who lost his punching bag. Don't let him define what we have here. And what do we have? I challenged, something breaking loose inside me. Because I don't know anymore. This started as charity, or protection, or whatever you want to call it. But now, now? He prompted, his dark eyes searching my face. Now I don't know where the lines are. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprising me, he began to speak. My father used my sister as collateral once. His voice carried old pain, carefully controlled. She was 17. A business deal went wrong, and he offered her to the other party as compensation, to settle his debts. Horror flooded through me. Dominic, I was 22. In university, I came home and she was gone. His hands flexed, remembering violence. It took me 5 years to find her. 5 years of searching, negotiating, paying ransoms, burning bridges with my father's associates. When I finally brought her home, he paused, jaw tight. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was him. But you're not, I said softly. No, but the damage was done. She left for California the moment she turned 18. Changed her name. She's the only family I have left who still speaks to me, and even that single quote's complicated. Understanding dawned. That's why you helped me. In the garden. I saw someone being destroyed by cruelty they didn't deserve. His eyes met mine, raw and honest. I saw desperation, loneliness, the kind of pain that comes from being treated as worthless by people who should protect you. He leaned forward slightly. I know what it's like to be desperate, Lily. To be alone. When I saw you crying in that garden, destroyed by that woman's casual cruelty, ... His voice dropped. I couldn't walk away. Tears pricked my eyes. This isn't charity, I realized aloud. No. His hand found mine, warm and solid. It's much more dangerous than that. The truth hung between us, complicated, messy, undeniable. This wasn't protection or pity or transaction. It was two broken people finding something whole in each other. Something shifted between us after that night in the library. Dominic became more present, not just at dinner, but throughout my days. He'd appear in the garden while I read, sitting beside me in comfortable silence. He'd find me in the library, discussing books with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. His hand would find mine during our evening walks, fingers intertwining as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The distance he'd carefully maintained was disappearing, degree by degree. You're different, I observed one evening as we sat by the fireplace in the main house. He'd invited me there for the first time, and the intimacy of the space, his private sanctuary, wasn't lost on me. How so? He swirled the whiskey in his glass, firelight catching in its amber depths. Closer, like you've decided something. His eyes met mine, dark and intent. I have. My breath caught. What? Instead of answering, he set down his glass and moved to sit beside me on the sofa. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell the subtle cologne that had become achingly familiar. I'm done pretending this is purely protective, he said quietly, that you're just a responsibility, a charitable impulse. What am I, then? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Mine, if you'll have me. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it ignited something deep and primal in my chest. I'm not a possession, I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. No. His voice dropped lower, rougher. You're a choice, one I'm making, one I'm hoping you'll make too. When he kissed me, it was nothing like I'd imagined. Not demanding or aggressive, but searching, asking permission with every movement. His lips moved against mine with a restraint that made me ache, like he was afraid I'd shatter. I wouldn't shatter. My hands found his shirt, fisting in the expensive fabric, pulling him closer. A sound escaped his throat, surprise and satisfaction and hunger all at once. The careful control fractured. Lily, my name was a prayer and a warning. Tell me to stop, don't. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I'm not fragile, Dominic. I'm not going to break. Something in his expression transformed relief and desire and something darker, more consuming. Thank God. The rest of the evening blurred into sensation, his hands learning the curves he'd only looked at, my fingers tracing the scars hidden beneath expensive shirts. Whispered confessions in the firelight, secrets traded like currency. Later, wrapped in his sheets with the city lights visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, he told me things I suspected no one else knew. About his first kill, the man who'd murdered his father in a territory dispute. About the weight of his name, the isolation of his position, the exhaustion of always being the monster everyone expected. I told him about the night my mother died. How I'd held her hand in that sterile hospital room, listening to machines beep and hiss, knowing I'd be alone. How I'd dropped out of school the next day because survival mattered more than dreams. About the bone-deep loneliness of being invisible to everyone who should have cared. You're not invisible to me, he murmured against my hair, his arms tightening around me. You're all I see. Is that why you had me investigated? Watched my apartment? I needed to understand you. To know if what I felt was real or just ... He paused, searching for words. My sister asked me once what I was afraid of. I told her nothing. But that was a lie. What are you afraid of? His hand traced idle patterns on my bare shoulder, becoming my father, hurting people I'm supposed to protect. And now, ... his voice dropped to barely a whisper. Losing you. I shifted to look at him fully, seeing vulnerability in those dark eyes that made my chest tight. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. I can promise I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Eyes open, knowing exactly who and what you are. Something fierce and possessive flashed across his features. You're mine now, he said into the darkness, the words both question and declaration. And for the first time in my life, belonging didn't feel like losing myself. It felt like finally being found. Morning shattered with Victor's fist against Dominic's bedroom door. I woke disoriented, wrapped in sheets that smelled like him, sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize. Then memory returned. Last night, the fireplace. The way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. Boss! Victor's voice carried urgency that sent ice down my spine. We have a problem. Dominic was already moving, pulling on clothes with practiced efficiency. Stay here, he ordered, his tone shifting from lover to commander in seconds. What's happening? I don't know yet. He kissed my forehead brief, distracted. Don't leave this room until I come back. But the door didn't close completely. And I'd never been good at following orders. I dressed quickly in the shirt he'd discarded last night, creeping to the doorway to listen. Voices drifted up from the study below, Victor's gravelly Russian, Dominic's clipped responses, and another man I didn't recognize. Leaked to the Kozlovs. They know about the girl. My blood turned to ice. How? Dominic's voice carried lethal calm. Someone on the inside. We're still tracking the source. Victor paused. But Dmitri knows she matters to you. He's already making moves. What kind of moves? Surveillance on the compound. Inquiries about her routine. Questions about security gaps. The unnamed man spoke now. Boss, they're going to make a play for her. Use her as leverage. Silence. Then Dominic's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. How many men can we pull from the Eastern operations? 30, maybe 40. But that leaves us exposed, I don't care. Doubled the guard rotation. No one enters or leaves without my explicit approval. And find the leak. I want a name by sunset. I should have retreated. Should have pretended I hadn't heard. Instead, I descended the stairs, drawn by something I couldn't name. Dominic's expression when he saw me was equal parts fury and fear. I told you to stay upstairs. You're planning to send me away. It wasn't a question. Lily, no. I moved into the study, aware of Victor and the other man watching with undisguised interest. Running doesn't solve this. It just confirms I'm your weakness. You are my weakness. His hands framed my face with desperate intensity. And my strength. Which is why keeping you alive is not negotiable. Then keep me alive here. I held his gaze steadily. Behind your walls, your guards, your protection. But don't send me away like I'm something to be hidden. For a long moment, he simply stared at me. Then, surprisingly, he looked to Victor. Can we secure the compound? If we pool resources, yes. It'll be tight, but manageable. Dominic turned back to me, conflict written across his features. You understand what this means? Lockdown. Armed guards. No leaving the estate until the threat is neutralized. I understand. And if they come anyway, then we deal with it together. I placed my hand over his heart, feeling it hammer beneath my palm. I'm not running from this, Dominic. Not from them, and not from you. Something in his expression broke and reformed. All right, but you stay with Anya, your sister, bringing her in. She's trained, capable, and the only person I trust completely with your safety. His voice softened slightly. She'll keep you company while I handle this. Anya Volkov arrived by helicopter 3 hours later. She was nothing like I expected, petite. Blonde, with her brother's dark eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. She assessed me with the clinical interest of a scientist examining a new species. So you're the reason my brother suddenly remembers how to smile, she said. Her accent less pronounced than Dominic's. I wasn't sure I'd ever see that again. He talks about you, I offered, uncertain how to navigate this meeting. Does he tell you he destroyed our father's empire to find me? She moved to the window, watching guards patrol the perimeter. That he burned bridges with half of his associates, spent millions, risked everything. He mentioned, he's been dead inside since before I can remember, Lily. She turned, her eyes sharp. Our father made sure of that, trained it out of him. But when he looks at you, ... double quotes, her expression softened fractionally. You've brought him back to life. Before I could respond, the lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Alarms shrieked. Through the window I saw muzzle flashes at the gate. Anya moved with inhuman speed, pulling a weapon from beneath her jacket. Get away from the windows. Now. More gunfire. Closer now. And through the far window, flames began to rise from the east wing, painting the night sky orange. They were here. The attack was brutal, but brief 12 minutes of gunfire and chaos that felt like hours. Anya positioned herself between me and the door, weapon trained on the entrance, every muscle coiled for violence. Stay down, she ordered, her voice deadly calm. Don't make a sound. Through the red emergency lighting, I heard boots pounding through hallways, shouting in Russian. Then Dominic's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. East wing clear. Find them. The door burst open. Anya's finger tightened on the trigger, then relaxed when she saw her brother. Dominic was covered in blood. His shirt torn, face cut above the eye, but moving with predatory purpose. His eyes found me immediately, something raw and desperate flashing across his features. You're not hurt. Not a question. A confirmation he needed. No, Anya did her job. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me against him with bruising force. I felt him trembling. Adrenaline, or fear, or both. They're gone. Victor's team is securing the perimeter. How many? Anya asked, holstering her weapon. 8, 4 casualties on their side. 2 wounded on ours. His voice was flat, reporting facts. But his arms around me told a different story. Dmitri sent them. A message. Some message, Anya muttered. Dominic pulled back just enough to frame my face with bloodied hands. This is my world, Lily. Violence. Blood. Enemies who will use anything I love as a weapon. His voice cracked slightly. I should send you away, somewhere safe, somewhere far from this. I covered his hands with mine, holding his gaze steadily. My safe life was drowning in debt, invisible to everyone, crying alone in gardens. You saw me. You chose me. I felt tears prick my eyes but refused to let them fall. Now I'm choosing you, all of you, including this. You could die. I could have died of hypothermia in my apartment when the heat got shut off. Could have been killed by a drunk driver on my walk to work. Could have worked myself into an early grave from exhaustion. I shook my head. At least here I'm living, really living, with someone who sees me as more than a burden or a transaction. Something in his expression. Broke relief and anguish and love all tangled together. He kissed me then, tasting like smoke and copper and desperation. When we finally pulled apart, Anya was watching with ill-concealed approval. She's tougher than she looks, she observed. I like her. So do I, Dominic murmured against my hair. God help me. 6 months later, the charity gala at the Grand View Hotel hummed with the same champagne-soaked conversations. The same crystal chandeliers reflecting fractured light. But this time, I wasn't hiding behind the coat check counter. I stood beside Dominic in a midnight blue gown that cost more than my old apartment's yearly rent, his arm around my waist in that possessive gesture I'd learned to crave. Around us, the city's elite nodded respectfully, some with genuine warmth, others with carefully masked fear. I'd learned to tell the difference. You're thinking too hard, Dominic murmured against my ear. I was just remembering the last time I was here. How different everything was. His arm tightened. Do you regret it? Any of it? I turned to face him fully, this dangerous, complicated man who'd seen me crying and decided I was worth protecting. Worth loving. Not for a second. After the attack, I'd stopped just existing in Dominic's world. I'd started shaping it. managing the legitimate businesses, serving as his conscience when needed, standing beside him in negotiations where territories and truces were decided. Rosa's Dinah received a substantial consulting fee that allowed her to hire proper staff. Mrs. Chun had a new apartment with working heat. My student loans were a distant memory. But more than that, I'd found purpose. Partnership. A home that wasn't defined by walls, but by the person who chose me when I'd forgotten how to choose myself. "Come with me," Dominic said suddenly, taking my hand. He led me through the ballroom, past curious glances, out into the hotel's garden, the same garden where I'd fled in tears 6 months ago, where everything had changed. "This is where I saw you," he said quietly, gesturing to the stone bench where I'd broken down. "Where I saw you crying and decided you were mine to protect." I remember. The memory felt both distant and immediate. I was so lost. You weren't lost. He turned to face me, moonlight catching in his dark eyes. "You were drowning. And I decided to drown with you instead of letting you go under alone." Tears blurred my vision. Happy ones this time. "Best decision you ever made?" His smile was rare and precious, the one he saved only for me. Best decision I ever made. When he kissed me in that garden, surrounded by the same perfectly manicured hedges that had witnessed my breakdown, I tasted possibility instead of despair. Partnership instead of possession. I'd come here 6 months ago as someone invisible, drowning, desperate. I left as someone seen, chosen, and I'd never felt more alive.